Uh, Today's essay is kind of my version of Stephen Hawking's brief history of time. Hawking's gave a brief history of time from the Big Bang to the black holes, which is 13.8 billion years ago. Um, but my essay is a brief history of my life, especially my life connected to my first ginger, an Irish setter, and my second ginger, which is also an Irish setter. And what's interesting about my relationship with my dog is that, and I don't fully understand. I mean, this is one of my issues about hauntings. Unless I can understand everything I'm haunted by until I can get a fuller explanation of why I got a second ginger in my twilight years is a bit beyond me. Um, but I certainly don't regret it. And it's interesting how the two of us relate to each other. And I mean, the last almost 4 years, Ginger has brought me absolute happiness, except starting last summer, she had some major medical problems, and they are not resolved, but she's stable right now. And the parallel between her life and my life is interesting because I've done the dance with death a couple times, and Ginger has at least once. And I'll tell you, and I'm telling you something that if I hadn't had the dance with death, and you were telling me about a dance with death that you had, and your relationship with your dog called Ginger, I'd be polite and just kind of nod my head, but that's not the situation. And I'm telling you something from as honest as I can. I can't express this any more honestly than to say, dance with death, and it changes your whole Weltanschauung, your whole worldview. And I was talking to somebody the other day about dancing with death, and the person said, I don't understand that. And I said, before I did the dance, either one of my dances, I didn't understand it. In fact, after I got over my subdural hematoma, cracking my head open, and being in the hospital and intensive care for a month, and then rehab hospital for almost another month, none of which I remembered, except for the last week in the rehab hospital. Two couple things. One is, I can tell just listening to somebody whether they have done the dance or not. In fact, I wasn't aware that I had done the dance. I knew I had near-death experience, but I didn't put two and two together until somebody who I had never met before, but I was told by a mutual friend to have lunch or dinner with him sometime, and I did in Chicago several years ago. And he was interviewing me informally for a teaching job in Chicago. And at the end of the dinner, his name is Mike Schmidt. He listened to me talk. He was interviewing me, kind of an informal interview. Campbell, it's okay, tell me about yourself. In the entire dinner, I told him about myself. And he was very kind of Rogerian, kind of like Carl Rogers, And at the end of the dinner, he said, "Have you ever seen or read the last lecture by Randy Pausch?" And I said, "Nope." And I kept on talking. He said, "I'll send you a link to it." The next morning, I got back home at 1 o'clock at night, and I wasn't going to look in my emails or check anything. I just simply went to bed, got up the next morning, went to my computer, looked at my emails, and all of a sudden I saw the link. Mike Schmidt, here's a link. Randy Pausch gave his last lecture about 9 months before he died of pancreatic cancer. His last lecture at Carnegie Mellon, that was a tradition at Carnegie Mellon. A retiring professor would give his last lecture to bring all of his friends and fellow colleagues in and babble on. Randy Pausch gave his last lecture when he was 47 years old, dying of pancreatic cancer. And he was more alive during that last lecture than anybody in his audience. And I don't know, the lecture is about an hour and 16 minutes and 37 seconds or something like that. I don't know what minute that I realized as I was watching it what was happening, because what he was talking about was what I was doing in my head. And so Dancing with Death is the best thing that happened to me in my life, because it taught me I don't have an eternity in this world. You know that you don't have an eternity either. You know it up here. You don't know it in your gut unless you've done the dance. And so that curse of coming close to dying at least twice dogs and cats and goldfish and grandparents and parents die. Even at 5, a child has that concept. But if you're 25 or 55 and you haven't done the dance, your concept of death is about what the child's is sometime in the distant future. But dance with death, and you realize how lucky you are, and therefore you come alive. So I appreciate your time watching and listening to this video and reading my essay. Take care.